Okay, so I just finished mastering this beat, and I thought I would record a video today kind of differently than I normally do. So normally I like record as I go. This time I'm going to kind of go through my process after the fact, which I don't know. We'll see if it's better. We'll see if it's worse. Let me know in the comments. If we come over to the mixer channel, we'll see that all of my melodies are going to one place. I have my 808s on one place, and then it's kind of hard to see because I don't have everything separated like I do with my drums. But all of my kicks, all of my claps and snares, and then all of my hat sounds, or whatever, are all going to one drum bus. And then all of my drums are going through something called parallel compression, where I'm sending the same signal to two different places. And then on this first place, I'm over compressing the signal and then sending just a little bit of that to the send signal to be mixed in with the original signal. And that's just to make the drums hit a little bit harder. And then we have my pre-master chain. So this is like where the mastering process kind of begins. So what I do when I'm mastering is I'll typically go and find like the loudest part of the beat. So for this one, it was actually just this little section here because I have both a kick and an 808 hitting at the same time. Usually that's a longer section, but in this case it wasn't. And then I just kind of loop that section as I do the mastering process. All right, then what I do is I take all of those sounds, put them on one place, and then I put on what's called my pre-master chain. And I kind of do mastering in two stages. You could probably get away with doing it all in one. And also, like, over time, I'm realizing that some plugins I'm using are redundant and others are not doing, things that I thought they were doing. And what I'm trying to say is I'm willing to change as I learn more things. And so if you see something in my process that doesn't make sense or that I can improve, feel free to let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to learn new things. But yeah, this is my my current process. So the first thing I have is an EQ where I'm kind of cutting the low lows as well as the high highs. And I also kind of like to boost the sub bass frequencies a little bit at times. After the EQ, I've got 3 instances of Maximus. And each one of them is doing essentially the same thing. They're all doing multi-band compression, but they're also doing other things that Maximus can do, which is like stereo separation. So you can put things in mono versus separated. You can also limit. You can do all kinds of things in Maximus. So let's go through each one. So I'm going to let the beat play for a little bit, and we can kind of just look at one of the sets of Maximus with a bit different bands and what they're doing. So you can see in each of these bands there is compression happening, and in some of the bands there's more compression happening than in others. And if you kind of want to see more of my in-depth process on how I do these different things and how I decide what gets more compression than what other things, I have a whole bunch of other videos on my channel of me mastering things from start to finish, and I like explain my process as I go. So that would be a better place to get that sort of information. But for the purposes of this video, I'm essentially just doing a little bit of compression, more in some places than others. And in some places, I'm also doing a little bit of expansion. So again, feel free to click on another mastering video that I've done to see why I'm doing that sort of thing. But I'm doing, some expansion, a little bit of like compression as well towards, some of the quieter things. And yeah, so I'm kind of doing that same sort of thing on all 3 different instances of Maximus. Something else I'm doing is, like I said earlier, you can mess with stereo. So I tend to push my lower frequencies into the mono field, and I take my higher frequencies and I separate them a little bit. And I tend to do that a little bit at a time as opposed to a lot at a time. Feel free to let me know if that's a good idea or not in the comments. Okay, so after our 3 different instances of Maximus where I'm doing compression for different frequency bands, I've got 2 different patcher presets, and the first one is for kind of the same thing I did with each Maximus instance. First one is for putting things in stereo versus mono. So I'm taking the low frequencies and putting them in mono, taking the high frequencies and separating them. And I'm kind of doing the same thing a little bit as I go in Maximus, which is part of the reason why I'm just doing it a little bit, because I'm also doing it more down the line as I go. So the next patcher preset I have is a mid-side EQ. What I'm doing with the mid-side EQ is I'm cutting the lower frequencies on, so this is just the sides that I have here, and this is an EQ, and I'm cutting the like sub-bass frequencies from the sides. And I'm also kind of boosting the bass frequencies just a little bit here. And I'm also kind of ducking down the high highs just a tiny amount, not too much. And then on just the signal going to the mids, I've got a limiter that is also adding a little bit of saturation. So I'm limiting and saturating here. Okay. And then after they go through that limiting and saturation, after that said, that's so weird. After they go through that limiting and saturation, they go to another EQ. And I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm cutting the low lows as well as the high highs. So after these two patcher presets, we go into my next thing in the chain, which is the Fruity Wave Shaper, which I have set to hard clip. And something I'm doing is I'm pushing 5 additional percentage of volume into this hard clipper. And because I'm hard clipping off some sound, the next thing in my chain is a limiter where I'm boosting the volume of the overall track by 0.3 decibels. And if we zoom in, we'll notice that I'm not actually limiting it. Well, maybe there at the very start, but aside from that, even though I push 0.3 decibels of volume, I'm not really limiting at all. So we're kind of cheating just a little bit extra volume out of that. So that pretty much fills up the pre-master chain. So after the pre-master chain, everything goes to the master chain, where I'm kind of doing a lot of similar things. So the first thing in the chain here is an EQ, where I'm cutting the low lows. And then I have a compressor. This compressor, I've kind of been playing with settings. Right now the release is kind of fast. Sometimes I've been doing a slower release. It really depends on the track. And also sometimes I play with the mix knob. Sometimes I have this, halfway mixed on. In this case, I have it mixed all the way on, 100%. In other cases, I've turned it off entirely. It really just depends on the track. So, all right, so that is the Fruity compressor. The next thing in the master chain is another patcher preset, which is doing the same thing. I'm taking the low frequencies, putting them in the mono, and then taking the high frequencies and putting them in separated. Then I have another Maximus instance where I'm doing essentially the same sort of thing, where I'm compressing in different frequency bands. And then on the master, I'm also kind of bringing up everything that isn't the very loudest stuff, just ever so slightly. So I'm just kind of barely expanding all the stuff that's not quite the loudest. And that's just something I've recently been doing that I'm kind of experimenting with. So we'll see if I continue to do that in the future. The next thing in the chain is a soft clipper and a limiter. Something else I'm doing in Maximus is I'm pushing 1.9 decibels of volume after I'm doing all this. So I'm pushing 1.9 decibels into this soft clipper, then it comes into this limiter here. And then after the Fruity limiter, I have a loudness beater, which I use to make sure that the entire beat is, at the correct levels, basically. But yeah, that's the process of mastering. Let's do a quick comparison of presets and how they affect the sound of the overall track. So let's turn off the master chain and the pre-master chain. So this is before any effects have gone on, and I'll probably be going above 0 if you listen here. Yeah, so we're going quite a bit above 0, actually. This is what everything sounds like. So if I turn on the pre-master chain, a wave shaper and limiter, if we turn, so let's do it before and after. So here's before. And here's after. So here's before. Here's after. So after that, we put on our master chain and we did all of these effects. So we have an EQ, a compressor, another patcher preset, which messes with the stereo. Maximus, which is doing essentially the same thing, a soft clipper, a limiter, and here's the before. Here's the after. So let's listen before any effects at all and all of the effects. So here's with no effects. So this is with no mastering effects at all. here's with everything. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments if you like this more than you like the videos where I explain as I go. I'm kind of experimenting with video ideas, so yeah, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions about anything you see, or if you have suggestions or anything that you think I can improve, feel free to throw that in the comments as well. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. Let's listen back and just let it ride.